talking about time when Soviet Union was about to collapse. Your perspective was very different from the perspective of major Western leaders on Soviet Union and Mikhail Gorbachev. It seems like major leaders in the West were enchanted with Mikhail Gorbachev, and you, representative of small Iceland, were very resistant to Gorbachev's charm. How come?
Well, it was not only the Western leaders who were encharmed. In Germany, there was a Gorbamania. One poll indicated that if he would have been a candidate for chancellor, he would have won. But why was it? Gorbachev was an attractive person. He wanted to change a system that was bankrupt ideologically and economically. His problem was that he didn't know how. In terms of economics, in changing or in managing the transition from the planned, centralized, nationalized economy to a functioning market economy, no plan. Glasnost, perestroika, yeah, glasnost, a lot of talk, but followed up with very, very little action. Gorbachev's power was on the wane. He had never been elected to any office like Yeltsin had been, both mayor of Moscow and president of the Duma. Gorbachev didn't have any following because of his talk, but never following up with positive action. I knew this. As I told them today, my eldest brother is a graduate of Moscow University. He had been there for 5 years, 2 years postgraduate work in Poland. Good contacts with dissidents from both, from Russia, from the Baltic countries, from Poland, Czechoslovakia. I myself had done a research project at Harvard on comparative economics. I knew that the Soviet economy was not functioning. I knew that they were bankrupt. I knew that Gorbachev was basically performing as a beggar. He wanted money, from day to day, from month to month. The Soviet Union was in a deep decline, and even if I'm not pretending to say that I knew they would dissolve, but I knew they were in a terrible state. And I knew that Gorbachev had lost following, was a weak leader. I did not believe that the hardliners would come back even if he were to be lost. So yes, what you said in the beginning is quite correct. I think that the leaders of the West, they were enchanted by Gorbachev. They thought that he was the only partner. If anything happened to him, all the gains of the peace process, ending the Cold War, would be lost. Even possibility of a renewal from Cold War to war in Eastern Europe. Okay, they were. It was the wrong analysis and therefore the wrong policy. And as a matter of fact, it is never very sensible to put all the eggs in the same basket, to place all of the hope for successful policy on the political fate of one single individual. That's not very prudent, and it turned out that this was. Remember the chicken speech? Very few remember it now. President Bush, on the 1st of August, 1991, addresses Verkhovna Rada in Kiev. And what does he say? What's the message of the leader of the democratic forces? He appeals to the Ukrainians not to succumb to extreme nationalism and keep the Soviet Union together in the name of stability and peace. What a message.
But Jan Baldwin, you also have direct experience with communists in Icelandic politics.
Yes.
Do you?
Yes. I present myself as a third generation of social democratic leaders. It so happens that my father was the leader of the party and my great-granduncle was one of the founders. Okay, it is in Nordic terms, the social democratic movement in Iceland is relatively young. The party and the labor movement were established in 1916, a year before the so-called Russian Revolution, which was, as a matter of fact, not a revolution, but a coup d'etat. And right from the beginning, it split. It split among the left wing, so-called, was pro-Soviet. They established a Communist Party in 1930, which was a member of the Komintern International, directed from Moscow. The Social Democrats and the Communists have therefore been fighting for influence in the Icelandic labor movement and on the Icelandic left. To begin with, well, the difference between, for instance, because you know about the social democratic movement in Sweden, Denmark, Norway, where they have been the dominant parties for decades. In Iceland it is not so, because the movement is younger, it split earlier, and the communists split the labor movement seriously. So the social democracy in Iceland is much weaker than it is in the core land of Scandinavia, because of the communist or the Moscow-oriented mission. And as you said, we've been fighting them to the end. When the Berlin Wall finally fell, we said, well, the war is over. Accept that you were wrong on every major event all the time, and we will accept you, come back. Which we did, but it failed again. The basic thing you asked about is this. Yes, we have been fighting communists for decades, and even if we were right on all the issues, they were quite successful, at least for some time. Now they are, of course, no longer there.
So unique Icelandic approach towards Soviet Union and Gorbachev was based on real experience,
yes,
in home domestic politics.
Yes.
And
my eldest brother was probably Moscow University at the same time as Gorbachev, but he was not studying law.
Maybe they met accidentally.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Now, conference you are part of today at Lithuanian National Library is dedicated, at least considerable part of it, to Vytautas Landsbergis. You know him for many years, and you call him a friend. And of course, opinions on Landsbergis differ. Some people say he is a dangerous extremist, while you are saying that he is a right man for the right time in the right place.
Yes.
Why?
Because he's a man of culture. He was professor of music. He's a concert pianist. He's a scholar in the world of music. He is totally devoted to your cultural heritage, to your language, to your literature, to the culture of Lithuania. And this was an existential struggle about that. It was not about, it was not merely about economic policy or market economy versus state economy, not merely. It was a much deeper one. He emerges as the leader of across-the-board Sąjūdis in an independence movement. He must have earned that because he was leader at a crucial time. I remember being warned within NATO by American representatives who said, look, Vytauto Landsbergio is a dangerous person. He is not a man that we can do business with. Well, that was it. I was absolutely, when I had met the man, he came to Iceland on an official visit. I think he was the first person on an official visit who gave a concert at the same time. He was acclaimed in Iceland as we have great esteem for a person who carries with him a cultural vision. I realized that he was probably at this time, I've used this word before, the right man in the right place at the right time. Not because we were soul fellows in politics. He is a conservative, I'm a social democrat. But he was the right leader at this time. He was stubborn. Yes, we needed to be stubborn. He was not easy to turn around. That's exactly what was necessary, not to be turned around. To know that you had a great cause, to know that you were going to follow through, to be convinced that you would win. Right man. And a friend, yes, we have our friendship has grown, our ways together in the political struggle have grown into personal friendship. I have deep respect for him.
You probably know that Vytautas Landsbergis is not universally loved, and
neither am I.
Yeah, but again, we have similar, comparable leaders like Lech Walesa in Poland, who led Poland out of Soviet socialist camp, and now a lot of people hate him inside the country. Even Václav Havel, by the end of his life, have some love lost between him and Czech people. Yeah. Why do you think, with your experience in politics, why those great leaders later on they have difficulties to make friends with their own people?
Well, we in Iceland, we have a saying, enginn hetja í eigin föðurlandið, no one is a hero in his home country. That's basically true. That is my experience, that is our experience. Good politicians are mainly dead politicians. Then if they have done something of worth, then later generations may perhaps review and see that this was really an accomplishment. Even if the contemporary, your contemporary, by your contemporary so controversial. What I would like to say is this: a politician who is not controversial is no bloody politician. He has nothing to say, nothing to do. He's of no value. He is simply taking the polls, managing to avoid difficult decisions, managing to never to take a struggle to convince the people about the rightness and the benefits. This is my experience. I spent 4 years negotiating with the German negotiating machine on behalf of the EU, creating what is called the European Economic Area. When this began in Iceland, I think I was just about the only person who said this is the right thing. The opposition was absolutely against it. The main party, the Conservative Party, was in opposition, absolutely against it. I convinced my collaborating parties, which were the center and left, to begin with. I convinced them that this was the right thing. To become not a member of the European Union, but a member of the inner market. And we call this the EEA, controversial, 4 years struggle. First, I myself was the only one speaking up for it. Then I convinced my party. Then I convinced my collaborators. Finally, I convinced my nation. And now everybody is saying this is the best thing that happened to us. Was I popular at the time? No, I was called a traitor. So what?
But you did the job you thought it was right to do.
Yeah.
All right. So with Iceland's great help, now Lithuania is a normal EU member, your ordinary EU and NATO member. How do you see, is Lithuania succeeding as a NATO member and as a member of European Union?
Yes. As I said before, the transition from a communist police state towards freedom, towards an open society, towards a market society under democratic control, as I say it. This is an extremely difficult transition period. When I look back, this is my firm opinion that the three Baltic countries have succeeded in managing this transition better than I dared to hope in the beginning. Basically, you have managed to create and maintain functioning democratic institutions, elections, parliamentary democracy, rule of law. Is there corruption? I presume there is some corruption, but it is not on the monumental scale that it spoils society as it is in Russia and as it has been up to now in Ukraine. You knew from your own experience that you had to consolidate this new open society, maintain your freedom. You had to take out an insurance policy. That means joining NATO, and for the other from the economic social perspective, joining the European Union, the family of democratic European nations. You succeeded in doing this. You fulfilled the entrance requirements. You did it on time, and to great benefit. Your societies are not they are not perfect any more than my society is, or American society, or almost wherever. But when you compare it in the historical perspective, I call it a success story. The weak spots are perhaps the emigration, that you have lost so many of top-class, high-quality people. We have benefited from that. There are now 2,000 or 3,000 Lithuanians working in Iceland with a good reputation, solid, hard-working people. That's our benefit. This is perhaps the greatest weakness. But looking back, with the whole picture in mind, it's a success story.
Jan Baldwin, your last diplomatic assignment was ambassadorship also in Ukraine. Yeah. So in 2004 and 2006, I believe.
Yeah, 2003 to 6, yes.
Yes. And you certainly visited the country.
Yes.
And did you at that time see this Ukraine's grandstand on being sovereign nation happening?
Yes. Even if I was visiting almost a guest, I came there on visits several times. But I knew a bit more about Ukraine, both from reading and from my students at Tartu University and Vilnius University. We had students from Ukraine, in both cases, very bright ones, and whom I got to know very well. I knew quite a bit about the corruption. I knew quite a bit about the political inefficiency in Ukraine. And now we can simply speak plainly about the comparison. In the Baltic countries, you managed to fulfill the entrance requirements that you had already set as an aim. Join the EU, join NATO. You did it. Ukraine did not do the homework for political reasons, for historical reasons. They didn't fulfill it. They were not prepared. I also blame those on the part of the leaders of the West. They could have done much more to speed up the process, to give a helping hand, to give both advice and support. They should have. And I would like to mention one thing, because I had one long meeting with President Leonid Kuchma in the beginning of the year 2004, just before he left power. He was very disappointed about how he had been received by leaders in the West. It was obvious that it would have taken years and years and years to go through the process. So somebody told him about the EEA, which I mentioned earlier, the European Economic Area, the agreement of the EFTA countries with the European Union, not to join, but to get the mutual economic benefits through the inner market, basically. Free flow of capital, establishment of companies, employment and people, etc. And a lot of bilateral agreements about research, science, implementation of new technologies, etc. Very extremely significant. It would have changed totally the situation for Ukraine. It would have shortened the waiting time for full membership. It would have been a bridge. I found Leonid Kuchma to be a highly intelligent person and very, very knowledgeable, very sharp, very quick to conclude his analysis. He had with him 7 or so experts on European affairs. Our common conclusion after a 2-hour meeting was that we should do it. We should have done this. And I would have worked on our side about the political, to move political doubts and doubts about it. But it never came to anything because he fell from power in 2005, and his successors never took it up. This, I'm not saying this to boast or something that I did. It was his initiative. He wanted to see if he could speed up the process. I agreed with him that this was politically possible, and I'm absolutely convinced that it would have been, if we would have succeeded, joining the European Union already before give it 4 or 5 years, 2004, 2010, 11, something like that. That is half the way, and then if they would have fulfilled the entrance requirements for the EU, NATO membership would have been soon. This could have been crucial, and because the misfortune of Ukraine now is the lost time. The others are criticizing that NATO is expanding towards the east and somehow undermining some Russian imperial near abroad, etc. This is all nonsense. It's exactly, it is the right of a sovereign nation to decide on their own alliances and in international relations. The Ukrainians had a national referendum on independence in 1991, where 92% of the people voted for it. Despite the ethnic mixture in Ukraine, Russian speakers, etc., it was a massive support. And Ukraine is an independent country. Russia was partner in guaranteeing the inviolability of Ukrainian borders. When the Ukrainians took the decision to deliver to Russia the nuclear arms that were on their territory. This guarantee and this international agreement, it was the United States, the United Kingdom and Russia, has been betrayed. It's a betrayal. How come that we cannot rely on the signatories of the major countries of the world in such a big issue, when Ukraine cooperated in maintaining security around nuclear weapons, and then they are simply a few years later, it's as if nothing had happened. This is a shameful betrayal, this war, unprovoked, unjustifiable, desperately destructive, and it's impossible to sit here and do nothing about it. The Ukrainians are taking this fight on behalf of civilization, of the rest of us. What is the defensive arrangement, the collective security of democratic nations for, if we cannot stop this? It must be stopped.
So you are saying that if Western leaders would have been wiser,
Yes.
there was real possibility to take Ukraine into NATO
Yes.
before all wars
Yes.
and annexations happened, and we wouldn't have the war now. But nevertheless, now Ukrainians are proving they are a nation, the nation on the battlefield. And so, and you said today that it is their existential struggle and our existential struggle.
Yes.
What could be done now when we have war on our hands?
What can be done without
On the Western, by the West.
without putting boots on the battleground, as the Americans put it? What can be done is more of what we have been doing. Economic sanctions on Russia, it's not enough. Provision of and the sending of up-to-date, technologically superior weaponry is necessary, yes. But Ukraine is being laid to waste. Ukraine is being destroyed. It is systematically destroying the infrastructure, the energy system, the water, all the basic necessities of a country is being destroyed. Is there really, we know that this is, what is unique about the situation is that the country causing this is a nuclear power, superpower. What makes it dangerous is not only the political mentality, the remnants of imperial fascism, which is really the motivation of Putin, but it is the threat of nuclear war. I noticed that Kuchma in an interview with the BBC a few months ago said, I do not exclude that Putin, when he realizes that in spite of his numerical superiority, he is in trouble. He is so taken aback by the strength of the Ukrainian military response. Kuchma said, I do not exclude that he would resort to nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear weapons. The only thing that could prevent him is this, that America state completely, explicitly beforehand, if you touch nuclear weapons in this conflict, we will wipe you out. Because that's the logic of nuclear war. If you begin,
do you think Americans did just that?
Huh?
Do you think Americans said that behind the scenes? They didn't?
No, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. But I think they should.
Okay. To end the conversation, now we have two books written by you. One is in English, one is translation into Lithuanian. So could you give a couple of reasons why Lithuanian readers should read those books?
Yes. This one is basically about Iceland's role in support of the independent struggle of the three Baltic countries in the years 1988 to 92. And it is with a lot of information about the mistaken policies of the Western leaders and about the criticism that I and my Danish colleague specifically maintained all the time within NATO specifically, and giving our voice where it mattered in the powers, in the echelons of power, in your support. And for those who are interested in looking back 30 years to find answer to the question, why on earth were we not received enthusiastically with open arms as a new democratic countries at the end of the Cold War. It is strange that it wasn't so, but it wasn't so, and this explains why. This one is not only about this. There are a few chapters. Certainly, it is a shorter version of the story of the reaction of the international community towards your independence struggle. Then there is a special chapter on Europe, the European Union, and political evaluation on how the European Union has partly failed in their reaction to during the financial crisis of 2008 and 9. And the third major part is about the Nordic model, the Nordic socio-economic model, of which I am a special spokesperson for. The Nordic model is a unique economic social structure. It was created during the dismal time of the interwar period when there was massive unemployment all over the world because of because of a capitalism run amok, out of control. What's basically at the heart of it is this: instead of those who are in charge of finance, ownership of companies, etc., instead of their having also the political power, in the Nordic countries, the social democratic movements, which are the political arm of the labor movement, they have been in charge in Sweden for 70 years, and usually in the Nordic countries. What is so special about it? Well, we accept the market economy. We are not the believers in the automatic recovery of market forces. That is a simplistic view. We believe that the market economy is important. It has shown results. We never deny facts. It is necessary to create the initiative and appeal to the profit motive where it is applicable. But it is not applicable everywhere. There are certain factors in society which should be not-for-profit social services. That is education. The state, through democratic means, should make sure that everyone, without with no regard to your personal, your parents' economy, etc., everyone should have equal opportunities to fulfill his wishes if he has the ability to do so. Equal opportunity for all. This should apply to schools, education, healthcare, and basically to the utilization of natural resources and mass communications, etc. Mixed economy, yes, but through democratic control. Is it successful? Well, I challenge anyone to meet me and compare it to any other society in terms of economic growth, in terms of economic development, in terms of productivity, in terms of technological advance, in terms of application of technology, in terms of employment, the lack of the absence of unemployment, the employment of women, clean societies, green economies. This is number one. The Nordic models has shown that in the age of globalization, it has withstood the test better than any other society, better than controlless capitalism, and we can forget about the communist experiment because that's now on the ash heaps of history. So, try it.
Okay, so this is a book on Nordic social model. You very strongly believe it. Yeah. I think it would be very useful to read for our social democrats, yes, to bring more socialism, which we are lacking very much here in, yes, Lithuania. Yeah. Jan Baldwin, it was great to talk to you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.